Hey, thanks for joining us today. We're here with Rob Flowers with Prime Lending, and we're gonna kind of toss around some ideas if you're working with a first-time home buyer and what first-time home buyers should be thinking about and looking at when they're getting ready to make that leap into purchasing their first home.
Well, I'm Hunter Isaac. I'm the new government affairs director for the Coastal Association here, and as someone who hasn't purchased a home before and really doesn't know a whole lot about the home buying process, I figured now would be a good time to get some information and produce a hopefully informational video for the association here. So, my first question to you is, what does a lender need from a first-time home buyer?
Well, the a buyer is basically three things: income, cash, and credit. So it's kind of a simple game, except for some of the federal regulations. But I liken it to a very simple scenario. I'd liken it to imagine yourself as a water balloon. Sounds silly, but if you press in on one side, something else pops out on the other side. So if we have income, cash, and credit, let's say you're a little bit short of income for qualifying for the price property that you want, then you should have better credit, should have some cash to fall back on. Let's say you just barely have enough cash to do the deal, then you should have a little bit better credit and a little bit better income so that your what we call the monthly debt to income ratio is better. So credit can be the brick wall that's tough to get around sometimes because uh, the debt to income ratio and the assets, they show the ability to pay your debts back, but the credit performance shows your willingness to pay your debts back. And since a mortgage is the biggest credit instrument of all time, you know, credit is the main thing. And most first time homebuyers don't have a clue as to how important the credit is. One 30-day late on a credit card can drop your score 85 points.
Mhm.
So and many people say, well, I've heard about credit and I've heard how people can get in problems with credit cards. So I don't have any credit cards. Well, that's a problem because you don't have any credit scores. So you haven't proved that you know how to handle credit. So therefore, how would you know how to handle the biggest credit instrument of your life? So what I tell people is, get two credit cards and always keep the balances under 30% of the limit. That's a benchmark. 30% of the limit and 50% of the limit, under or over, can really help or really hurt your credit scores. So, and it doesn't take much to establish credit. You could get a credit limit of $200 on a credit card and go buy a tank of gas.
Mhm.
And then when you get the bill, don't pay it off early. When you get the bill, pay it down, but always leave a balance on there. Because if you pay it down to zero every time, you show no credit management, right? So the systems are set up, even if there's $5 or $10 as a balance on there, you're showing credit management. But paying it down to zero, you're not, right? So I tell people get two cards, charge a tank of gas on one, a bag of groceries on the other. Then when he comes in, pay it down. But never let it go over 30% of the limit.
Okay, so it sounds like cash, credit, and debt are the three determining factors.
Cash, credit, and income,
Income.
right? So, like income, we're looking for job stability, the consistency of that income flow. So, should be on your job, you know, 6 months, hopefully 12 months. If you just change jobs, that's okay. I've had people that have changed jobs two, three times in 2 year period because we always go back 2 years. And if it's the same type of business and or the same income or a little bit higher, that's okay. As long as there's not too much of a break in between the employers.
Mhm.
Uh, Commission income's a different story. You need a 2 year track history, typically at the same employer, to show an average. So then the assets, that's your cash available that you have to use for closing costs or down payment. And a lot of people have been saving cash at home ever since the recession. Cash is invisible. You need a bank account. So put it in there and leave it in there because we've got to see that it's been in there for at least 2 months to count it.
Mhm.
Now, gifts from relatives, that's okay. Borrowed monies is not okay. You can't borrow money for the down payment and the closing costs.
With those three factors considered, is there any other factors that I should consider when fixing a price range for myself?
No, the point of calling a lender is that we try to determine your max borrowing power.
Mhm.
And if that's not high enough, we show you how to get up to the level that you want to get up to. And the only way to get up higher on borrowing power is either to make more income or to reduce debts, if the debts are the critical factor. And quite often they are. You know, the when your monthly payments on credit cards, car loans, when that starts exceeding 10% of your monthly income, now you're reducing your borrowing power.
Okay.
Let me go back to assets for a second. Down payment and closing costs. For first time home buyers, the state of Maryland has probably the best first time home buyer in the country program. And they'll lend you up to 5% of the sales price of the house at 0% interest, no monthly payments. You just pay the state back whenever the day comes that you either refinance or sell that property. And that can be as far off as 30 years down the road. So if you qualify for a $200,000 house, they'll lend you $10,000, no payment. So that'll cover all closing costs. And quite often there isn't a down payment required if it's a USDA loan. Um, FHA is 3.5%, but that 10,000 should cover part of that down payment. And if there's any money left over to come up with, the seller's allowed to contribute towards the transaction too. So you can still get in for no money out of pocket.
Really?
It's a great program.
Great program. Now, on the topic of incentives, are there any other places that I should be looking for to see if I can get some assistance in the first time home buying process?
Well, some of the counties like Salisbury neighborhood housing has monies for, depending on your income limits, you got to be under certain income limits, has monies that they'll lend for properties that you're buying in the county and in the city. But quite often, the state won't participate with that because the state's money and Salisbury's money is in second position, a second mortgage. And neither one of them want to be in the third position, a third mortgage. So it's one or the other. So,
No stacking.
no.
So I've gone through the process with you as a lender. I'm approved. What are some of the fees that I can expect from there?
Well, when you sign a contract, you'll give the realtor what's called an earnest money deposit, EMD. That's to show good faith that you want to proceed on the transaction. So if we're doing first time home buyer and that money, borrowing that money from the state, that'll come back to you at settlement. So it's temporary. So then the inspection fees, you do a home inspection. Sometimes you want to do a termite report and a well and septic. You would have to come up with those fees out of pocket too, and that can be another $1,000 as well.
Mhm.
So, but at settlement, um, you would get reimbursed. You can get reimbursed those fees if the first time home buyer program from the state covers all of that. So you're only temporarily out that money. The objective of first time home buyer is to try to get in for as little or nothing out of pocket. That's my objective for the first time home buyer. So I'm looking at how to create the transaction. So let's say the money from the state isn't quite enough to cover everything. Then I'll tell the realtor, as I did 2 days ago, I told the realtor that you're going to need to ask the seller to contribute $5,500 towards the buyer's closing costs. That way we get him in for nothing out of pocket. So that's the whole key.
Mhm. And would you or the agent be the one helping me understand some of these incentives that exist and working me through the process?
Well, I always say a good loan originator is a good loan educator.
Okay.
So I'm always offering information that I'm trying to answer the next question before you even ask the next question.
Well, I thank you for that.
Right. That's the way to build trust, and always give them my cell phone number 24/7 because you're going to think of something late at night, call. Let's get the question answered right off the bat so you're not worrying about it. But as far as the transaction of buying the piece of real estate, that's where you deal with the realtor.
Okay. From your position, what are some things that a first-time home buyer should not do?
Get a new loan. I've pre-qualified people, and 3 months later, they find a property, but they went out and got a car loan.
Hmm.
You know, as one guy said to me, he says, well, I can always sleep in my car, but I can never drive my house. Do tell the people, and unfortunately I didn't tell this guy, that was a few years ago, but I tell them, okay, keep everything where it is or pay this down, these debts down, so as to qualify for this. Because you might find a property that's 5 or 10,000 more than what your limit is now. So it's all math. It's all, it's pretty easy analysis for us to guide you and tell you what to do and what not to do. So take for example, let's go to cash. Let's say that they should have a little bit more cash in the bank. If they've got cash at home, I tell them live off the cash. Don't deposit that into your bank account because remember I said cash is invisible. We can't prove that that cash was not borrowed, and that's what underwriters are looking at to make sure you didn't borrow money for down payment or closing costs. So I tell people live off the cash, let the direct deposit of your payroll go into your bank account because it's coded and we can see where it came from. So don't take anything out of your account. Let that balance build up because the higher that balance builds up, it can even possibly help you qualify for more of a property. It can help that debt to income ratio become a little bit more lenient. So it's like a computer game. So you can't see it, but what we're going into the automated underwriting systems of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, USDA. So, and we're plugging in your scenario. So I know what the general guidelines are, so I will pick a loan amount and a sales price that's about at your limit. And I'll plug it in there and we read the credit report and put in your assets. And then if it gives me an approval, I'm going to go up and up and up until I get a decline. That way I know what your ceiling of your payment is, right? Mm-hmm. Or if it gives me a decline, I'm going down, down, down until I get an approval. Obviously, you haven't picked a property yet, so I'm guessing on the taxes for the area that you're looking in. And so I will tell you, and I'll tell the realtor, you qualify for a max payment of $2,000 a month. And that's assuming the real estate taxes on that property are $2,400 a year. So folks, when you're zeroing in on a property, call me and tell me not just what the list price is, but what are the taxes. And I replug it back in just to make sure we have your pre-approval okay.
Okay. About how long can I, as a first-time home buyer, expect this process to last? And is there anything that I can do to help streamline it?
Okay, so pre-qualifying you is pretty easy. It can take 10, 15 minutes, if we know your information. But what I tell customers is send me the documentation. I give you a little checklist of what we need. So I like to imagine that you're buying a property right now. Mm-hmm. So send me these tax returns, W-2s, pay stubs, bank statements, front of your driver's license. So I try to create a complete file as if I was going right into live underwriting now. That way, when you make an offer with a contract, I'm telling the agents, I've got you basically approved because we know the parameters. So it will go to a live human being for final underwriting. But the computer system, that underwriting, if we've plugged in our information properly, and that's what we check out up front, if it says approved, you're approved. That's why it's important to get, take for example, pay stubs. So many people are paid hourly now. So there's a convoluted calculation that the Fed and the state makes us do on that. So we want to get your pay stubs. We want to do the verification of employment with the employer to look at what your overtime or commissions or bonuses were, not just year to date, but last year and the year before. So we can come up with what your qualifying income is going to be. So how long? However long it takes you to get me the information. Mm-hmm. All right. And then it might take a few days after that to get the employer to fill out the forms and complete that. Okay. But then you're good to go. Therefore, when you sign a contract right now, you could always settle within 30 days. It doesn't matter if it's a Maryland Mortgage Program or FHA, VA, it doesn't matter.
So it sounds like bringing you accurate information up front is the best thing I can do to help streamline.
Right. Give us the checklist that we've asked for. And if there's something missing, then we've also got ways that you can upload or we can communicate with your bank or your employer electronically in case you can't find old pay stubs or old W-2s. Mm-hmm. So what we try to do is, take you down the tension ladder and put you up the trust ladder up front. So I tell people just what I just told you. You're approved. Okay. All this information is fine. Go look for the property. That way you're relaxed during the process. And even though a final underwriter has to sign off on it, they will sign off on it because all our information is proper and we have followed the parameters and it's done.
Awesome.
You know, Rod touched a lot or talked a lot about Fannie and Freddie, and we're wondering who they are, and USDA mortgages and VA loans and FHA. What are all of these acronyms?
And
We're
next
going to
is,
dive deep into that next time.
okay.